We got a new Nepo baby! With a song that is climbing the charts, actually. Nepo baby cries erupt as billionaire's daughter, Stella Lefty, storms in a Billboard top 10 at breakneck speed. She's being called a Nepo baby after people are finding out about her billionaire father. She is a country singer-songwriter. She comes from the Midwest, and she has a song that is going crazy right now that is actually called Boston.
On a train back to Boston, and we're jumping the gun, and I'm telling you, baby, this is the part where I'd run, but I like it when you...
All right, that's the general vibe of the song. In my opinion, it's very in line with kind of this new generation of pop country slop. Boring guitars, uninteresting vocals. It just feels like dentist office country music to me. And while it's not quite as overly stupid and dumbed down and soulless as I would say, like, you know, bro country from the 2000s is, spiritually it's landing in a very similar place. Fans of that shit will show up to one of these concerts as well. So believe me, it's not that vastly different. What makes it additionally weird now is that not only are we getting pop country slop, more of it forced down our throats, but it has to come by way of people who are already coming into the industry with means and a leg up. I've said this before, I'll say it again. If you have rich parents, if you have parents who have a background in music, ultimately, you know, all that really matters is whether or not you're making songs that people like and that people care about and people enjoy listening to. Ultimately, that's the most important thing. But what's becoming more and more upsetting and more disheartening is that it feels like every new artist that we're seeing pop off in the industry at multiple levels, be they on the indie side, the underground side, or the mainstream side, everybody's coming into the industry with the means to be able to tough it out for however long it's going to take to either not make it instantaneously off the bat, because your average person cannot afford to make no money making music for like 3 to 5 years. No average person can afford that. Nobody, your average person does not, it has less than $400 in their bank account. That's your average person. Nobody has money lying around to be like, well, I guess I'll just like try to make it as a commercial artist, writing my little country songs about how I love it when people are nice to me. And on top of that, you know, if you have the means to be able to enter into an industry where, you know, money talks, if you're doing it fully independently, as somebody in chat just said, you can afford a manager, you can afford PR. You can afford the means of like pushing you and your music out there. You can afford people who will strategize on your behalf and figure out ways to make what you're doing more popular on social media. And now there's all sorts of other options when it comes to making your music get juiced algorithmically, though, you know, I'm not accusing Stella specifically of that. All I'm saying is that, you know, as long as you have some of these stars aligning for you, you're better off than the average Joe Schmo, who again is coming into the industry with no money whatsoever. And even if they do well, or do manage to build some kind of audience, from there, unless they get signed to a label and build up more buzz and get, you know, like a boon of media attention and a really big sort of like, you know, platform opportunity, even if you do build at least a little bit of an audience, you're probably still years away, unless you're a marketing fucking genius, from making a legit wage off of the music that you release out there into the world, especially if you're primarily hoping to make a living off of whatever it's doing on streaming. The Needle Drop doesn't care about country, and this is about getting views, right? Yeah, well, I'm not talking about country as a genre. This is not a discussion about country. This is a criticism of the way the music industry is working, because it feels like every new face that we're getting and every new face that we're exposed to is coming into the industry with sort of, you know, this almost like guarantee of success, because they have the ability to put themselves in the right studios and connect themselves with the right producers and pay for the right PR and have the money and means to make themselves by, I guess, like an order of magnitude luckier, if you want to put it that way, to sort of like maybe make their success more likely is my issue. It's rare these days that you see somebody popping off in the industry who's just like a regular fucking person. With that, we're seeing less and less sort of relatable music, in my opinion, or music that sort of like addresses the times that we're living in. because often in the music industry these days, we're being handed stars that don't have to think about the times that we're living in because they're shielded from it because they grew up with billionaire parents. I care about country music insofar as I care about all popular genres that I cover, but this is not a country music discussion. I'm not talking about this because I'm worried about the state of country. I'm talking about this because our Billboard stars, our top 10 stars, our industry stars increasingly are coming from families and coming from means that are very established, are very rich, are very well off, are very well connected. I've made this point before, and I'll say it one time because this is the place to say it. This is not so much the fault of these people, but the fault of the fact that we live under a system and we live in an economy where your average person has zero to no chance of making it in the industry because they're economically blocked out from doing so. When you talk to musicians now, like a lot of their time is not even necessarily spent writing and recording music, but finding different ways to promote the music and then going out and touring, because performing is where you're actually going to end up making your money at the end of the day. It's just very disheartening and it's very unfortunate because it feels like more and more regular people are being blocked out of the opportunity to make and have a music career. And it's not something that is limited to any one genre, again, because this is not a country thing. We're seeing this in all avenues of the music industry. So again, it's nothing new, or rather it's nothing specific to one genre is what I want to say. What's new is that it's becoming increasingly the case that that is the sort of background you need to come from in order to more or less guarantee your success. I got laughed at recommending the new Sturgill in the last chat. This dude's audience, this dude's audience is a phony argument. An argument for what? What do you think I'm arguing? You could like the new Sturgill album. Do you mean the one that he just did where he was kind of doing the alternative band and rock thing, which I did review that. It was okay. I didn't really like it all that much. It's sad local venues are filled with bands who will never make it. And the other thing is like local venues are filled with bands, but a lot of them aren't filled with locals. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't go out and support their local scenes like they should. I think it's just because a lot of people, it's just kind of easier to just be spoon-fed by whatever the algorithm is going to give you. And it reminds me a lot of like the 2000s in terms of like the consolidation of radio and how difficult it was as an independent artist and an underground artist to sort of like get your music any sort of, attention on the airwaves or get it in front of people, because traditional media was just so, again, consolidated and it made it difficult to kind of like break through. What about the new Megan Maroney, Tyler Childers? I do like the new Tyler Childers, and I reviewed that. You ignore Charlie Crockett, stop talking about country. Man, I think you just need to shut the fuck up. And Charlie Crockett is cool. I think a lot of his albums sound very samey. He just kind of like writes a lot of the same songs over and over again, in my opinion. But Charlie Crockett is not a chart-topping artist. Again, what I'm talking about is sort of like having the ability and the means to sort of like push yourself to the upper echelons of the music industry and break into the top. Unfortunately, I think Charlie Crockett is a talented guy, and I wouldn't say he has no ability to break into the mainstream, but I think Charlie Crockett's made it pretty clear he doesn't want to make country music that appeals in a mainstream way. You can't ignore every major country release all year and then talk about this. Yeah, I can. I'm doing it. It's funny. I get comments all the time of just people being like, you didn't talk about this and this. You can't talk about this. Like, yeah, I can. Yeah, I'm doing that. Sorry, I apologize. I'm doing it. You can talk about any country music that you want to. I'm not going to stop you. But I don't know, whatever. I appreciate you being subscribed. And, you're free to suggest more country on New Music Friday. But, it's whatever. Sorry you're sensitive, and I'm sorry I told you to shut the fuck up. My underground and hardcore scene went from 10 to over 100 average show in 3 years, so it definitely works. For the worst, sometimes large audiences can dilute scenes. Yeah, but honestly, I feel like we're in a place right now where like it's more difficult to really get a local scene assembled and excited. I would say the one good thing about right now is that wall between, a healthy scene where everybody's involved and one where only 3 people are showing up to a show. The wall is not material. It's not a physical wall. It's just really made the fuck up. It's just people needing to kind of like wake up to what's around them and realizing that the internet isn't everything and the internet doesn't offer everything. And, social media these days can actually be quite boring. And the algorithms that surround you happen to pen you into certain perspectives and sounds and so on and so forth. And sometimes you need to break yourself outside of that to actually hear something interesting and exciting. And getting people to realize that can be difficult. And getting people to act and think more locally because the algorithm is so stimulating for a lot of people can be difficult. Even if every single person isn't in it, dilutes things or doesn't all have the same taste or maybe isn't all on the same page about everything. 100 people in the same area that routinely show up to a space to support something and care about it and are passionate about it and are excited about it, that's a good thing. Always embrace that. That's a healthy thing. The stories are told about how there were like less than half a dozen people at the first Sex Pistols show. Shit has to start somewhere. Prof is claiming that he got blacklisted from Billboard after being independent, even though he had 30,000 in sales. That's crazy. And he's not even the only artist who has said stuff like that. I do think Billboard does not exist to look out there for the little guy, like, oh yeah, who are the cool little independent artists that are, doing sales? And, Billboard does not take kindly to smaller artists and independent artists and non-industry artists finding ways to game the sales system in the same way that major label artists do. There have been artists who have been sort of like spanked or not counted for, selling their albums in a certain way or doing bundles and so on and so forth, and haven't been embraced in the same way that artists like Khaled and many others have for doing exactly that same shit. Sorry for trying to bridge the gap to country. I'll shut the fuck up. Look, if you want to recommend country, that's fine. I'm not against you recommending country music or advocating that we all listen to more country music. There's nothing wrong with that. And look, I would hear your argument and I would see what you're saying here in terms of talking about this topic. If I was coming on here to make the argument that like, hey, country music's just full of fucking Nepo babies now, but that's not the argument that I'm making. I know that there are country artists out there that are like, real actual, people or like had real actual backgrounds and lives and, don't have like CEO parents who are billionaires. There are people like that in all genres of music. All I'm saying is that what it takes a lot of the time to be the most successful in these lanes, unfortunately today, is like the means to be able to juice your music, pay for the best PR, pay for the best producers, get those industry connections, and doing that quickly, doing that efficiently, doing that in a way where you're going to maximize your results. Increasingly, as we're seeing, a lot of the people who are making it happen are people with rich parents, are industry connections, and it's just getting upsetting. It's getting disheartening. I would like to see more artists, not just in country, not just generally, but like topping the charts, who are like relatable and like real and like, I don't know, feel like they're speaking to an experience that normal people come from. I guess that's primarily what I'm saying. Stella Lefty makes country music, but her music isn't even appealing specifically or solely to a country audience. Country music is maybe the biggest it's been commercially in a long time. And that's because pop music listeners are getting into the genre. Casuals are getting into the genre. So, just kind of is what it is.